Good evening, campers. It's me, Kira, and today we are going to talk about Haruki Murakami's epic work, 1Q84. The clever little sausages amongst you will identify that this looks like 1984, and indeed this book series is a retelling of the Orwellian tale. Murakami tells us within these books is that the Q stands for question, and just like Winston begins to question the world under Big Brother, the two main characters, Aomame and Tengo, are questioning the world that they live in. Actually, a bit of linguistic spiel. The Japanese word for 9 is Q. Therefore, to the Japanese ears, Q and 9 sound interchangeable. Unable to differentiate between the two definitely plays into the grand theme of what 1Q84 is. But I think it's worthwhile going into this, that Murakami has gone on record to say what he wanted to achieve with this book is to tell a simple story in the most complicated manner possible. Therefore, what is the simple story? The elevator pitch that I would provide to 1Q84 is that boy meets girl, girl and boy get lost, and they reunite. To quote from the philosophical work Disney's Beauty and the Beast, it is a tale as old as time. I love a segue, and I'm going to use it to tangent into Murakami's use of music and how he uses music in order to develop the themes. Murakami is notably known for his love of music, maybe only rivaled by his love of t-shirts. I still can't believe this book exists. Murakami opens his epic with a piece of music just like an opera, and we are introduced to this piece of music before we are introduced to characters and motives, and that is Janacek's Sinfonia. The Czech composer who was born in Brno, and we won't talk about that, composed Sinfonia in order to explore the idea of what the contemporary free man was. 1Q84 establishes from the forefront what is to be discussed, and this is where you can see the retelling and if not the advancement of Orwell's 1984, where Winston is continually overlooked by the totalitarian regime of Big Brother. Murakami juxtaposes this, and within parallel worlds which Aomame and Tengo inhabit, begs the reader to question the notion of if these two characters in a free society actually have free will, or is everything within their lives constructed, orchestrated and composed for them. Again, Murakami emphasizes this from the beginning. Aomame, who is sat in the taxi, is told by the taxi driver to do something out of the ordinary, and upon doing what she is being told to do, crosses over into the world of 1Q84, leaving the world behind where Tengo occupies of Tokyo in 1984. Why Aomame, under the guise of the Dowager, is Trotskying people with like a Lego pickaxe, and Tengo being told by his friend that he should consider rewriting the work of Fukuyari's A Chrysalis, we realise that these characters are always being told what to do, while our two protagonists are able to identify from an outsider's perspective other people who are being taken advantage of and whose lives are being controlled, such as with the leader in the metaphorical and equally in the literal way. It will take until book 3 where the introduction of a new character, Ishikawa, takes the forefront. Murakami, through Ishikawa, shows the characters that their lives can be orchestrated from snippets, that it was not a spontaneous moment 20 years ago that solidified their fates. 1Q84 builds tension, suspense, and maintains its sense of mystery and dreamlike realism by sitting in the grey line between fact and fiction, as seen with the rewriting of A Chrysalis, the blurring between the worlds, between the 9 and the Q. In addition to that grey space, there's a lot of openness as well in relation to the end. Once they ascend, they realise a billboard looks a bit different. So is this a third parallel world? Does the story not actually end with these characters? Does it actually begin? In that world that we are not going to explore, is that where Murakami leaves a lot of openness, such as where is Fukuyari, why did some people have to die, and the many details that Murakami just seems to drop within the storytelling of this. But Fukuyari advises us that there are two worlds, and within the present of one, the past is rewritten in another. And again, that free will element is questioned again again. The perfect example for this is between Aomame and the leader's conversation, where he seems to know that the assassination is going to happen, and basically, let's get it over and done with. This moment of question, does free will exist, is then succeeded by one of the strangest scenes I've ever read. Tengo is explicit. He does not sleep with his students, but finds himself in bed, paralyzed. His student Fukaeri then decides to straddle him, almost against his will. Now Tengo here, because he is paralyzed, is unable to stop the act, but it doesn't seem as though he wants to stop the act. And then he ejaculates, which then Aomame gets pregnant, not Fukaeri, at that moment in time. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. Aware that Murakami wanted to write a simple story told in the most complex way possible, but there is a lot of confusion and a lot of openness, which I think people enjoy, because there's a lot of discussion, a lot of argument, and definitely a lot of discourse about what is happening and why things are happening, which is never a bad thing with books. But I think Murakami here has bought a jigsaw puzzle from the charity shop and realised that a few pieces are missing. There's like one piece that isn't even like related to the same puzzle, but he's just going to push it in anyway. This is definitely a original retelling of 1984, and I do think it has to be fair to say that Murakami mentions many literary figures across the Western and the Eastern canon in order to make his point clear, and he articulates to the reader why these things are happening, why Dostoevsky is being brought in, why Chekhov is being brought in. Retrospectively, in relation to the Karamazov brothers, he talks about the role of Christ and devil, and why Dostoevsky within his discussion of faith questions free will, of which Murakami offers the reader to utilize his reading of Dostoevsky in order to tackle and analyze Fukigaki, the religious cult that is present within 1Q84. In relation to Chekhov, Tengo reads to Fukaeri a snippet of Chekhov's work. And here Murakami advises us that he sees that the role of the author is not to answer questions, but to ask questions. Positioning what is the role of the author and what is the expectation of the author, should it be spoon-fed to the reader. Readers might have two different positions on this. They can see it as almost like a get-out clause. The Murakami doesn't answer anything and doesn't provide readers closure because he said, well, I'm just here to ask the questions. However, you could see it as an active exercise in exploring that. Murakami is exercising this Chekhovian principle in order to make a point. As much as I'm drawn to this side of the argument, I'm gravitationally pulled over here. And should readers demand closure from a book? Murakami, without wanting to reiterate too much, is asking a lot of questions here. And I think you might be frustrated by this in his refusal to provide answers, or you might be frustrated to how he is composing this story. I have to say, Murakami does have a bad rap in relation to how he depicts women and sex scenes. And within 1Q84, there is no shadow of a doubt that they are horrendous, they are cringeworthy, and really just over the... Like, the end of book one, the end of book one, that is trying to be somewhat serious, but you have Tengo's girlfriend holding the weight of his willy, be like, yes. Murakami's big brother is not in the Orwellian sense, it's in the Brazilian sense. I do enjoy Murakami's conjecture, which is that Big Brother, in relation to what Orwell was writing, could not sustain itself within society, and therefore juxtaposes that by having the little people, these magical little beings who somehow orchestrate the world, but no one is able to identify them, no one is able to understand what the little people are doing. And here, Murakami is saying that you don't have free will because there is a totalitarian government. You don't have free will because you are the product of everyone that you interact with. Anyone who seems insignificant, the way that you speak, the way that you address, and the way that you act towards them conducts the way that you are. And the only way we are able to assess the contemporary free man, to talk about Janacek again, is to look how the contemporary free man acts. For all its flaws, and the bit in book 3 where they just sat in rooms, what on earth was that all about? Murakami's prose is buttery smooth. This is just enjoyable to read, despite the cringe, despite just being able to, why is she holding the willy throughout the, why? He's so effortless, and the way that he's able to introduce this dreamy, absurd, surreal aspect to the reader, posing these grand questions in a way that really is pared down. He's able to articulate it easily. Like, I don't think you could go into this and not understand the major theme that Murakami wants to give you, because he's so good at explaining these really unexplainable situations. I loved it. I loved 1Q84. I didn't think I would, but I really enjoyed this. Like, I would give this an 8 out of 10. I have to say, although I was drawn into the world, it did take me until halfway through book 2 in order for that click to occur. While we've made it to the end, look what I got! The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. I think this is his most, like, critically acclaimed. And now that I've got the epic out of the way, let's get into Murakami's magic realism. I don't know if this counts as magic realism. I'm not entirely sure what I would define this with. I'll let the genre experts have a whale of a time arguing that in the comments. I don't know what that is. I don't know what this is. I loved it though.